Welcome to MoobTube. We are here to review Wells and then also Wells. These episodes will be separate. The one you're listening to right now is about Charlotte Wells' debut, Aftersun. But we will be talking about a different Wells. Once we've finished recording this podcast, we'll be talking about Orson Welles, the director of Citizen Kane, Magnificent Ambersons, The Trial, and many other great films.
You may have heard of him.
Not in any way to draw a comparison between these two people who happen to have a similar name, not spelled exactly, not spelled the same.
That's the beginning and end of it.
They're not, Charlotte Wells is not a nepo baby. It's not related to Orson Welles, but we just ended up thinking about the two around the same time, and we needed to do a podcast. So
yeah, we're Wells maxing.
Here goes on Aftersun.
So Aftersun's interesting. I mean, I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it when it came on its inevitable rollout on Mubi, because this is what happens now. A film comes out and is basically financed by or backed by or distributed by one of these major streaming platforms, and their timing is almost simultaneous. So, so it's the death knell for cinema.
It's quite troubling for Mubi, because obviously once it's hit the streaming platform, there's no extra real revenue to be.
No one's going to the cinema
to be collected from it, because everyone who's paid for Mubi gets it for free.
Yeah, exactly.
And no one's really going to buy it on Blu-ray.
But it makes me feel, because if this kind of leads neatly into my feelings about this film, is that I'm glad I didn't pay to go see it in the cinema,
because you didn't like it very much.
It's profoundly mid, actually. I felt like less of my time and money had been.
Yeah, but let's just try and.
I'm not here to carp.
There's context of the release of this film that I want to kind of articulate and then park. The context is most British film critics and industry heads. I mean, you expect the industry heads to say it, but film critics as well are saying that this is, putting British cinema on the map. This is the rejuvenation of British cinema. This is, we're back. The British are coming.
Yeah, it's not just a bright new talent. It specifically speaks to a new implied high point and or starter's gun for British filmmaking. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have got behind it. And I've only seen fulsome positive reviews of this film.
There's been a bit of an omerta around saying that it's only fine.
So guess what we think about it?
Indeed, bad.
But I think, so there's the context of how it fits into British filmmaking, and historically, there's a question of how it fits into British filmmaking now. There's also the context of how it fits into a particular cultural moment. Aftersun is a nostalgia-dripped, vibey seaside film, and these seem inescapable at the moment, because I was thinking about, New Horizons, we saw Sundown by Michael Franco, sorry. We saw a lot of people have seen White Lotus on TV. We seem to be
parallel
flooding, absolutely flooded in different.
The beaches are flooded.
The beaches are flooded.
Like after lockdown.
We're in a particular cultural moment where it feels like every other film being made or TV series, prestige TV series being made at the moment is focused on coastlines, beaches, often with this gauze or veil of immense nostalgia
and
tragedy around it, which is interesting. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's just it's there's almost this copy pasta of like for like.
That's interesting. You've gone for the geographical angle. The angle I would go for would be this psychoanalytical angle, and I think it is culturally in the water. There is
literally in water.
There is. He nearly gets in the water, but then he doesn't. He runs towards, at night, he runs towards the shore and doesn't walk in, or doesn't drown himself.
Yeah.
People think that everything can be explained by their past. And one of the central flaws of Aftersun is that it has a present day wraparound framing of the main character, Sophie, who is now a lesbian and is sitting in her hipster flat, filmed in a tribute to La Chambre by Chantal Akerman. At the end, watching back this footage, and somehow
camcorder footage
that she shot, that her and her father shot on this holiday in Turkey in 2002 or whenever it's set. There is the implication that somehow she can discover something about who she is through remembering these moments. Which, I mean, it's not
there's
not
like
outrageous
there's
to
like
suggest.
a rosebud.
Yeah, it's
somewhere.
not outrageous to suggest that one's childhood informs one's adulthood, but we don't really find out anything particularly significant. People have talked around the film as if the father has passed away, but this is never
This is
actually...
one of my big bugbear, one of my bête noirs with this film, because I feel like any cinematic text should be self-revelatory or not, or it should be self-contained. I shouldn't have to rely. Like I'm not disparaging or put people to jump down my throat or denying the value of theoretical or textual readings of films. I'm saying the film itself, I should be able to go to the cinema and get everything I need, the director wants me to get, in the film itself.
Yeah.
Now, the amount of blurbs I saw around this film where it says, Sophie is looking back at camcorder footage of the last holiday she took with her father. That is not...
Never actually said.
That's not surfaced anywhere in the film. It might be but the only reason you would think that is because you read this blurb and go, oh, this is the last holiday. That is not present or surfaced anywhere in the film whatsoever. There's no reason to believe that from what you're being given.
Frustratingly, aside from a very haunting score. A score by Oliver Coates, which the cues, Oliver Coates, interesting musician otherwise, not that I know much about that sort of thing, but he...
Sticks and Slime, whatever it's called, is a great album.
But he, there we go, but his music is very facile in this film, and it punctuates or gestures towards narrative beats that simply do not occur.
Yeah, it's a bit like
watching Jaws, and you never see a shark. They're just this constant kind of... the emotional shark never appears.
You'll have like a scene like they'll just be hanging out at the beach or swimming, and it will suddenly be like this kind of surge of slightly lazy synth pads with a slightly ominous shimmer to them, right? They'll be like, or they're having a good time, but what if they're not? Exactly, that's the implication. It's like very lazy, very programmatic. My feeling about... I've made that clear about she's looking back to this through this DV cam camcorder thing that you've mentioned, this wraparound narrative. Now, a smarter film.
Oh, I love a smart film.
I love smart films. Now, a smarter film is going to say, what is this film actually showing me? It's showing me the incomprehension that a child faces when looking at a parent and going, how much do you really know this person? That's an interesting, fertile grounds for making a film. So the logical follow-on point is going, okay, so we're seeing this holiday and the father through Sophie's eyes, who's a 11-year-old girl.
Yes, she's 11.
11 years old. You can go, okay.
She turns 11 on the holiday, I think.
This is it. It's correct. So it would go, okay, so the filmmaker should then put the hand up and go, okay, so what I really need to do is film this film entirely from locked within the perspective of the child. What the child only sees what the child sees, right? But what the film does is it wants these moments of tension. So we often see the father, played by Paul Mescal, running around his own, doing his own thing. We should not be seeing that. We should not, because she does not know what he got up to. We should not know that he maybe goes and runs into the sea and maybe tries to drown himself. We should not know that he's drinking on his own at a bar. We should not see any of that. We should be locked onto Sophie the entire time, because that is her perspective, and we're do not give us this other stuff. It's like she liked the images that she was able to concoct with Paul Mescal, him crying on his own in the room. Don't give us that. You think
she's sort of having her cake and eating it a bit with what she's showing, because she's also, what's ironic about what you're saying is that she also doesn't very, very often she doesn't show things that would be helpful to show, and yet she also does show things that are just kind of inconsistent with what the project seems to be trying to discover.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's trying to have its cake and eat it and give us a little bit of everything. So what you end up is kind of a smorgasbord of visual, stylistic references, different kind of, and they don't function tightly enough to create a kind of interesting counterpoint. It is multiple films shifting around in this loose sack, is what it felt like. I feel like there are more daring decisions, and I understand why she didn't do them, because it still is a prestige art house film ultimately. But we were saying the whole thing could have just been the reorganized camcorder footage, and that could have been the film.
Yeah, some of my favorite moments are shot are the bits on DV which have a sort of take on a sort of structural quality, obviously, because they're sometimes still and long, and or show like a strange, unusual perspective on the scene. There's one
because
bit,
it's being shot by an amateur. By
yeah,
the child,
yeah. There's one bit where you see his reflection in the screen it's plugged into or something, which is like a very unusual, interesting shot that I haven't seen before. So I'm always here for that.
Yeah, it's not without its stylistic flourishes. For
yeah,
sure.
But yeah, the great stylistic flourish would have been to try and do the whole thing on DV, or to do like, I don't know, one half of it, like 1 hour of the film in DV, and then skip to something like using those textures in a less basic way, basically, because then the camcorder just becomes a gimmick and becomes a sort of
it becomes interstitial. It's like we've had 10 minutes of them hanging out at the beach and the pool. Let's have 30 or 40 seconds of her waving a camera around. Right, now back to 10 more minutes of not exposition, but of plot movement as this 4 or 5 day holiday slowly kind of moves on. And this is I mean, that was my frustration with it, because it was, you could see these kind of, I think maybe it's debut problems in a way. Like people have got this accumulated grab bag of references that they're maybe not completely confident with, but it felt like there were these intrusions of like, beau travail in there. Often how parts of bodies were framed against the ocean, and kind of hands, or their hands folded together, or shoulders and things like that. And there were these very bright, punctuated blue beau travail, Claire Denis style shots that were kind of inserting themselves here and there.
It's a weird sort of slightly off pesto that's been blended from Akerman and Denis.
Yeah,
two great women filmmakers,
but so oppositional in their visual structural
exactly,
languages,
doing different things.
Yeah,
and I think also, well, let's talk. So, look, interesting question. We've been quite negative about the film. What did you like about it? What do you think was distinctively good?
I really liked its use of DV. I thought, like you said, with the there were a couple of times where reflections are used interestingly in televisions. I think the use of it is relatively daring. It wasn't done entirely superficially. I felt like it was cast very well. Like even Paul, even though he's not natural, he's not Scottish. It doesn't really matter. His character was good. It was well rounded. I think the actual scenes between them felt very natural and great. There were the hard part is maybe casting a child and father in this quite strange relationship. It worked, those moments. I thought they were kind of, for what they were worth, quite compelling. But I didn't like a great deal else about it, really. I felt I felt the cinematography was either interesting and good or downright terrible. Some of I think she was good, or her cinematographer was, whose name escapes me, a guy, was good close, but any mid shots, any medium distance shots were
really uncomposed,
really just bad, just ugly shots. And it was quite jarring. It was like, okay, so maybe the cinematographer actually a photographer and not a. It just felt like,
I felt like the cinematography traded off these occasional flourishes, or these sort of these like distinctive moments, or like a moment where they're on a cruise or something, or they're on a coast, and the focus is on the landscape, and you see them in blur, which is like, it's like a distinctive image. It's not usual, but in the context of something that's filmed in such a prosaic way, otherwise, it does feel like a bit of a gimmick.
It feels like a kind of shopping basket of visual things you want to have in the film. It's like, I'd like to have
show that you've thought about thought about form. Do one or two, to sprinkle it with one or two like flourishes.
The thing is, it
doesn't run through the whole.
No,
film.
you need to make them coherent. Otherwise, it's just style for style's sake. It's like that needs to be serving a purpose. It needs to be serving a function, and they're not. They're just there because. And there's a couple of times where I think there's a scene that everyone loves. In the reviews I was reading, where she's at the airport at the end, and the camera kind of pans. No, she's in her home watching the footage, and the camera pans round, and we then see Paul Mescal in the corridor of there.
It pans round from her room into. That's quite cleverly done, but it's not
cleverly done. But again,
good.
No, it's not good, and it's suddenly filled with artifice.
She also, this is where it becomes film theatre. She interesting. Like, I should say, like, because theatre, like what we think of as being theatrical, is maybe I'm redefining what I mean by theatrical, but like the way that it goes from the room into the airport the thing you walk out of at the airport to get to departures, to get to arrivals.
Yeah,
that sort of door with a grey corridor. At the end of the grey corridor, Paul Mescal leaves, having kind of turned off the camcorder, and out of that, there's this like flashing, this blackness with a strobe light, which harks back to this never not irritating motif of present day Sophie in a club for some reason,
and him as well,
and then him and her dancing at the club in the holiday resort to the Under Pressure by Queen and Bowie.
Yeah.
So this is bad and annoying, and why do we have to suddenly change? Why does the location have to become all these things at once? Why can't the location just be the location and the filmmaking make us think?
It comes back to this thing, which was the point I made before about white collar psilocybism being expanded. It's these expansive visual flourishes which aren't flush with the rest of the film, but look good in marketing trailers. Yeah. So you have your trailer and it's got this nice flashing stroby scene and go, that looks good, and you've got all these visual flourishes, but 90% of the film is shot, like you said, very prosaically. That is not the film.
Tar does this as well.
Yeah.
Painfully, the final half hour of Tar is just like a kind of ridiculous dream sequence. Owen wrote a very good piece on his Substack about films which have dream sequences which seem like they're subverting a kind of pre-existing naturalism, but end up
reinforcing
it by coming across as like gimmicks, but also provide like snappy, snazzy footage for the trailer that can then also give the wrong idea about how radical the film actually is formally.
This is it, and so those scenes I didn't get. I think again, like there were times, when I often say, and we've often said, show don't tell, but I think the film didn't do enough sufficient exposition. It also wasn't confident with the tools it had at its disposal. So I think the club scene, a million ways it could be figurative. It could be that if he did die, maybe he died of an overdose of party drugs, which is what was going over in my head, because he looks like he's struggling a bit, sweating heavily. I was like, okay, so maybe his death isn't suicide, it's like an accidental death, which is in its own way its own kind of tragedy or whatever. But
why should we have to ponder all these things just based off vibes?
Yeah, right, exactly. Because it wasn't like you need to feed people a little bit more. I wanted a spoon of something to help me get that film a bit more. Otherwise, it just feels like a series of music videos.
And then what are we relying on? Are we relying? Has Charlotte Wells said in interviews that her father died of something, or what's?
I think her dad did die. I think her dad, it's autobiographical.
Are people just saying that this happened in the film because she said in interviews that this happened in her life? That is an absolutely insane.
It's an insane possibility.
Collapse of and you could find to make films about things happening in your life, but they should only be understood within the context of themselves, not within the context of the artist's life.
It should stand on its own, unless you're explicitly making. Talk about Akerman, talk about Letters from Home. The context there is that Akerman is in New York and her mother's writing letters to her.
Yeah, fine, but that's all there. It's all there.
Yeah. That's all you need to know, and it's filled with. It's not. I don't love that film, but it's very compelling in a lot of ways, and I think everything you need to know about the film is surfaced in the kind of menu that you're given. Whereas with it irritates me that there are these blurbs talking about. I'm like, is there a press release I didn't see about this film, or is there an interview I haven't read where this is explained? Because to me this isn't the last holiday show that has with her father, because the film's not telling me that. Like, the film needs to tell you these things, and that could be very easily solved by a single conversation in the present day, being like, with her girlfriend, and present going, oh, is this the last holiday you went on? Yes, or something, just some fucking thing that serves you.
I mean, the fact is that the present day wraparound was
really bad.
It was just not salvageable.
I think that's when the film was at its best. It was when Paul Mescal was obviously trying to put on a brave face and struggling, and so if he's trying to intuit into his feelings but can't, because she's a child, she doesn't get adult feelings. That's enough of a film right there.
Like you say,
stuff on top.
It's like you say, like in answer to my question about its strengths, like the casting is a great strength. Mescal is a good actor. The young girl is a great actor as well. They have chemistry. They read as father and daughter. They're great. There's great little kind of edges of their dynamic, like when the guys playing pool think that they're brother and sister, and he sort of says, "Oh, cheers, yeah." I'm her dad, actually, and they're like, oh, sorry. There's like lovely, the moments that almost don't feel like that intended or that tortured are the best moments that are just sort of like ambient. But those moments don't really make a feature film. And it could have been actually an interesting short if it had just been 15 minutes of these like moments of them together with like something bubbling. What the problem was that it was just like endless moments of like us being told something was bubbling while these often quite nice moments were happening.
Yeah, and it was feeling a bit awkward,
someone.
And it was like, oh, maybe we should just put some really programmatic, ominous music in. Oh, okay, good. Now people get that like there's something sad going on here. And it's like it felt very instrumental in a way that I think I found myself very bored at long stretches of this film. And it's not a long film; it's an hour and a half. It's 90 minutes, but it's, one of those films that is 90 minutes, but feels like sort of 140 minutes or something. It felt pacing was off. I don't know. I felt, like I said, I'm glad I didn't see it at the cinema. Pay to see it at the cinema.
I did see it at the cinema, and I think I came away from it with a more positive feeling than I currently have. And I rewatched bits of it just now on Mubi to sort of refresh myself because I saw it in November, and everything that I gave the benefit of the doubt to at the time has just like really shattered. I think that is important. Like your first reactions to a film, we sometimes do instant reaction reviews, but like you can get a little bit sort of swept away with a good performance or a sort of a frisson. And there were a couple moments like the karaoke song where she sings "Losing My Religion" and he doesn't want to come up and
that's a great scene.
That is a fantastic scene,
because they were being given everything that we need, which is her effectively her age, because he believes they're too old to do this as father and daughter. Her doing it, her kind of growing confidence and distance from him in a way. His pain, because he obviously looks genuinely anguished, tortured, that he wants to go up, but he's obviously feeling too sad to go and do it. He doesn't want to go and do it. He's too depressed.
Right, it's a killer set piece.
It's a really good set piece, and like all the bits that it tries elsewhere to kind of strong arm you into feeling and seeing, it did there very naturally, very easily. It did it very easily, and it looked good, that scene. So I think it's sometimes it's possible to kind of
I wonder how much of the budget was spent on composition rights for that. Actually, no, there are loads of big pop songs.
Bowie and fucking Queen. I mean,
crazy.
That's not cheap. You're looking at 50 grand plus, 100 grand for just licensing that bit of music.
Crazy. There was that film that we saw in Berlin, that really bad Afterwater film, where like apparently half the budget went on licensing the Arthur Russell song that happens in there.
Really? Yeah. Oh shit.
It's like just get one of your mates who does Russell-esque music. Yeah, After Water,
After Sun, Sundown.
Sundown, yeah. All these films have got the same title.
This is Cinema off the End of the World.
Oof. Haraway.
That should probably do us, I think.
Yeah,
I want to talk about a great filmmaker now.
Yeah, so if you've enjoyed listening to this discussion of Charlotte Wells, and you've understood why we don't think... In fact, let me make a segue, even though these are separate episodes.
Yeah.
I think one of the crucial problems with British cinema, and it keeps coming back even when people say that a new film is the savior or the new best thing since sliced bread, is that we don't know how to do spectacle. We don't know how to do images with huge depth. We don't know how to do images of a sort of carnival parade scale.
We have no
really striking, with a few exceptions, maybe Nicholas Roeg. For some reason, British cinema... not so much.
Souvenir, but there are moments in Souvenir that are very European. It's not as much of a backwater.
But British cinema is lacking that kind of spectacle. But someone who wasn't lacking that spectacle, who has a homophonic name to Charlotte Wells, was of course Orson Welles. We will be talking about him over the next episode. Join us for that.
See you in a few minutes.